welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be discussing a historical topic that I think is incredibly overlooked and undertaught, considering its devastating effects on so many women and its subsequent influence in labor reform. We're going to be discussing the Radium Girls. Now, the Radium Girls are a group of women who, in the 1910s and 20s, worked at factories in Orange, New Jersey, Ottawa, Illinois, and Waterbury, Connecticut. These women painted glowing luminescent paint on watch faces and military dials, using their lips to point the brushes or give them a more fine tip for details. And of course, the ingredient that made the paint glow was the highly toxic element radium. This may seem shocking to us now, but at the time radium was not considered deadly. In fact, it was believed to have health benefits. And so items such as water, toothpaste, and cosmetics were sold with radium in them as a sort of all-encompassing miracle cure. And so when the factory workers asked if ingesting the radium was safe, they were told that it was not just harmless, but good for them. As many of the Radium Girls were teenagers who liked to go out and party at night after a long day at work, the girls would often paint their faces, teeth, and dresses so that they would glow in the dark while dancing. And then the death started. The first girl to die was Amelia Mejia, excuse my pronunciation, who died in 1922 at the age of 25. While still alive, her jaw had crumbled and needed to be removed. And can you guess what the doctors reported her cause of death as? Syphilis. After Amelia's death, the women who worked in the dial factories became ill and died in growing numbers. They contracted anemia, cancer, and radium jaw, which is the deterioration of the jawbone. Their employers denied any connection between the deaths and the women's work, even after the company commissioned a study on the matter, which found that the radium was causing these deaths. The company covered it up and allowed the public to continue believing that the radium was safe. However, the scientists in the factory used protective equipment while handling the radium and avoided any exposure to it, while the women still ingested paint on the daily. Then, in 1925, a pathologist named Harrison Martland proved conclusively that radium was the cause of the dial painters' deaths, and the Radium Girls began to sue the company, called the Radium Dial Company. The women in Orange, New Jersey, sued first. But knowing that the women had only months to live, the Radium Dial Company would push off the trials as far as they could so that the women would die before they could appear in court. The women in New Jersey ended up taking settlements. The trial and court proceedings were covered widely by the media, and this is when the women were dubbed the Radium Girls. Even as the dial painters in Ottawa, Illinois were reading the news coverage of the lawsuit in Orange, Radium Dial Company claimed that it was the element mesothorium that was the culprit in New Jersey, and that radium dial paint was safe because it contained no mesothorium, only radium. Eventually, the women in Ottawa, Illinois became ill and sued as well, the most famous of these women being Catherine Donahue. Although Donahue died in 1938 before the lawsuit was officially settled, she did end up winning the case. Overall, the case of the Radium Girls is an important piece in the history of women's rights and labor rights movement overall. The case brought public attention to injustice and health hazards in the workplace and influenced the establishment of occupational disease labor laws, as well as the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, also known as the OSHA. If you're interested in learning more, I would highly encourage you to do some further research yourself. I've put some sources in the description box below, but feel free to look more into it. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye.